The grand chamber of the Galactic Consortium buzzed with activity. The air shimmered faintly from the energy fields that maintained the artificial gravity in this colossal station orbiting the galactic core. Delegates from hundreds of advanced species crowded the balconies and observation decks, their many eyes, sensors, and other appendages locked on the gleaming center stage. This was where history was made, and more often, where dreams were crushed. At the center of the stage stood High Overseer Gorlax, a towering figure with crystalline skin that refracted light into a halo of shifting colors. His voice carried authority, amplified to fill every corner of the chamber. Today, he intoned, we witnessed the boldness of a new species daring to attempt the galactic ascension trials. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The trials were not taken lightly. They were infamous throughout the galaxy, a series of impossibly grueling challenges meant to prove a species' worthiness for membership in the consortium. For eons, only the most advanced and elite species had dared to compete, and none had succeeded. But today was different. Today, it was the humans. On the far side of the chamber, a set of heavy doors hissed open, and the human delegation strode in. Leading them was Commander Elise Carter, a tall, sharp-eyed woman whose presence exuded quiet confidence. Behind her walked Dr. Elena Park, a brilliant but unassuming scientist with a knack for solving the unsolvable, Major Adira Singh, a stoic soldier with a reputation for surviving the impossible, Marcus Hayes, a scrappy engineer who seemed to always have grease under his fingernails, and finally, Jack Travers, a stand-up comedian turned cultural ambassador who carried himself with a lopsided grin that screamed mischief. The sight of them, small, fragile-looking beings by galactic standards, drew a wave of chuckles and condescending remarks from the crowd. Deathworlders, one delegate scoffed, their voice dripping with disdain. Do they even understand what they are walking into? They won't last an hour, another sneered. Jack, hearing the whispers, leaned toward Marcus. Are they laughing at us already? Great. We haven't even done anything stupid yet. Marcus smirked. Give it time. As the humans took their place on the stage, Overseer Gorlax's gaze bore into them. Humanity, he began, his voice thick with skepticism, you stand here as representatives of a world classified as a death world. A planet teeming with violent predators, volatile weather, and countless natural hazards. A place where only the reckless and the resilient could survive. Jack couldn't help himself. Thanks for the travel brochure. We're thinking of adding that to our tourism campaign. The chamber fell silent. Delegates stared in shock, unaccustomed to such irreverence. Gorlax's crystalline face shimmered ominously. Do you take this moment lightly, human? Elise stepped in before Jack could dig them deeper. High Overseer, we understand the gravity of the situation. Humanity may be new to the galactic stage, but we've faced challenges our entire existence. We're here to prove our worth. Gorlax studied her for a moment before nodding. Very well. The galactic ascension trials begin now. The floor beneath the humans shimmered, and they vanished in a burst of light. The team materialized in darkness. The air was cold and damp, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed around them. As their eyes adjusted, the walls of the labyrinth came into focus, dark, jagged stone veined with a faint green luminescence that pulsed like a heartbeat. Well, this is cozy, Jack quipped, pulling a flashlight from his belt. Elena activated her wrist-mounted scanner, her brow furrowing as data streamed across the display. The walls are emitting a low-frequency psychic field. It's designed to disorient and destabilize us. Adira unslung her plasma rifle, scanning the shadows. Then we stay focused. Don't let it get to you. Jack turned to Elise. So, Commander, what's the plan? Left turn, right turn, or do we just close our eyes and hope for the best? Elise ignored the sarcasm and studied the faintly glowing floor. We map it as we go. No random turns. Elena, you're on mapping. Marcus, mark every intersection we pass. Marcus grinned, pulling a spray can from his pack. Already ahead of you. The team began moving, their footsteps echoing softly in the endless corridors. The labyrinth was eerily quiet, but it wasn't long before the psychic field began to take its toll. Adira was the first to react, her grip tightening on her rifle. I hear whispers. Can anyone else hear them? Elena nodded, her voice strained. It's not real. The field is manipulating our minds. Just block it out. Jack, however, seemed unfazed. Whispers? I thought that was my conscience. Don't worry, I haven't listened to that guy in years. Adira shot him a sharp look, but the tension broke slightly, and she let out a small, reluctant chuckle. Hours passed, or at least it felt like hours. Time itself seemed to warp in the labyrinth, and the walls began to shift subtly, making it harder to tell where they'd been and where they were going. The glowing markings Marcus had left began to fade after a while, adding to the disorientation. Then came the illusions. At first, they were small, fleeting shadows at the edge of their vision, faint whispers that sounded like long-lost voices. But as the team pressed on, the illusions grew more vivid. Jack froze at one intersection, staring down a corridor where he saw his childhood home, perfectly intact. "Jack?" Elise's voice cut through the fog. "What are you doing?" He blinked, shaking his head. "Sorry, thought I saw something." False alarm. Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's the labyrinth. It knows how to hit where it hurts. Just keep moving." But the labyrinth wasn't done. As they rounded a corner, the walls ahead of them shifted violently, revealing a massive chasm that stretched into darkness. There was no bridge, no visible way across. Marcus groaned. "Oh, great. A bottomless pit. Classic evil maze move." Elise scanned the chasm, her jaw tightening. "There has to be a way. The trials aren't designed to be unwinnable." "Debatable," Jack said, peering into the void. "I mean, they named it the Labyrinth of Infinite Despair. That doesn't exactly scream fair play." It was Jack, however, who noticed the faint shimmer in the air. "Wait a second," he picked up a small stone and tossed it forward. It bounced mid-air, landing on an invisible surface. "Aha! Hidden bridge." Adira raised an eyebrow. "How did you see that?" "Deathworlder instincts," Jack said with a grin. "Or maybe I've watched too many horror movies." Crossing the hidden bridge was nerve-wracking. The psychic field grew stronger as they advanced, bombarding them with visions and whispers. Marcus nearly lost his footing when he heard the voice of his late sister calling to him, but Adira grabbed his arm just in time. Finally, the team reached the end of the bridge and entered a vast circular chamber. At its center was a glowing orb, pulsating with the same green light as the walls. As they approached, the orb's light intensified, and a deep, resonant voice filled the chamber. "You have reached the heart of the labyrinth. To proceed, you must prove your unity." The walls shifted, revealing a series of interconnected puzzles, mechanical contraptions, logic grids, and physical challenges that required perfect coordination. The team exchanged looks, understanding the stakes. This wasn't just a test of individual skill, it was a test of their ability to work together. Elise took charge, assigning roles based on their strengths. Marcus tackled the mechanical puzzles, his engineer's mind working quickly to decipher the alien mechanisms. Elena focused on the logic grids, while Adira handled the physical challenges, using her military training to navigate the labyrinthine contraptions. Jack, to everyone's surprise, proved invaluable as a communicator, bouncing between tasks and keeping morale high with his humor. "Come on, team. We've got this," he shouted, dramatically pointing like a holodrama hero. "Adira, crush that obstacle. Elena, outthink that grid. Marcus, don't blow us up." The puzzles grew more complex, the pressure mounting with each passing second. But the humans thrived under the stress, their resilience and adaptability shining through. When the final puzzle clicked into place, the orb's light shifted from green to a warm, golden hue. The voice returned, its tone almost impressed. "You have conquered the labyrinth of infinite despair. Proceed to the next trial." The team felt a rush of triumph as the walls shimmered, revealing a portal leading to the next stage. Jack turned to the others, his grin widening. "Well, that was fun. What's next? Lava pits? Giant robots? Alien trivia night?" Elise chuckled, shaking her head. "Let's take it one step at a time, Jack." As they stepped through the portal, the labyrinth faded behind them, but the lessons they had learned, and the bonds they had forged, remained. The humans had passed the first trial not just through strength and intelligence, but through something no psychic field could break, their ability to laugh in the face of despair and find light in the darkest of places. And somewhere in the vast chamber of the Galactic Consortium, the assembled delegates began to whisper a different tune about the Deathworlders. For the first time, they began to wonder, could humanity actually win this?
The team emerged from the portal into a harsh, blinding light. Instinctively, they raised their arms to shield their eyes as they stumbled forward. When their vision adjusted, the new landscape took shape, an endless expanse of jagged, metallic terrain under a swirling crimson sky. The horizon was dotted with towering spires of blackened steel, their sharp edges glowing faintly with an ominous red hue. "Welcome to the Forge of Eternity," a voice boomed from above. It was the same deep, resonant tone that had spoken to them in the labyrinth, though now it carried a sinister edge. "Here, we test your endurance, your ingenuity, and your will to survive. Elena checked her scanner, frowning as readings flooded the screen. The temperature is already climbing. And, wait, is that gravity flux? It's not just climbing, Adira said, shifting uncomfortably as she adjusted the straps on her armor. It's pressing down on us. Indeed, the air itself seemed heavier, every movement more taxing than the last. The ground beneath their boots radiated heat, and the gravity seemed to pull harder with every step. Jack wiped a bead of sweat from his brow. Well, this looks like a fun little vacation spot. Anyone else feel like we just stepped into an oven that's trying to crush us? Marcus knelt and examined the metallic ground. This place isn't natural. It's some kind of engineered environment designed to push us past our limits. Adira grunted. Then we'd better get moving before it gets worse. The team advanced cautiously, the oppressive heat and gravity sapping their strength with every step. The terrain was uneven, forcing them to climb over jagged ridges and navigate steep inclines. Sweat soaked through their clothes, and their breathing grew labored as the pressure mounted. Elena's scanner beeped. The temperature's climbing to dangerous levels. If it keeps going up, we'll cook, Marcus finished grimly, adjusting the straps on his pack. Not exactly the way I planned on going out. Jack, walking slightly ahead, turned to face them. Oh, come on. You're all acting like this is the worst thing ever. Think of it as a galactic sauna. We're just sweating out the toxins. Adira shot him a withering look. If we survive this, Jack, remind me to thank you for your motivational speeches. The oppressive heat and gravity weren't the only challenges. As they climbed a steep slope, the faint hum of machinery reached their ears. Marcus froze, motioning for the others to stop. Do you hear that? Before anyone could respond, a swarm of drones appeared over the ridge ahead. They were sleek, black machines with glowing red eyes, their sharp edges bristling with weapons. They moved with precision, spreading out to encircle the team. Well, there goes the quiet hike, Jack said, drawing his sidearm. What's the plan, fearless leader? Elise scanned the drones, her sharp eyes narrowing. These aren't ordinary combat drones. Look at their movements, they're adaptive. We need to hit fast and hard before they can adjust. Adira readied her plasma rifle, her muscles tensed despite the crushing gravity. On it. The first drone fired, its plasma bolt sizzling through the air. Adira rolled to the side and returned fire, her shot striking the drone's sensor array and sending it spiraling to the ground. The others followed suit, engaging the swarm with precision and teamwork. Marcus used his engineering expertise to disable a drone, prying open its casing with a multitool and pulling out a critical power module. Gotcha, he muttered, grinning as the drone collapsed into a heap of sparking metal. Jack, meanwhile, provided cover fire, his aim surprisingly steady despite the gravity. Hey, Sparky, he shouted at one of the drones. Bet you didn't think you'd get taken out by a comedian, huh? The drones quickly adapted, their movements becoming more erratic and unpredictable. They began coordinating their attacks, forcing the team to retreat toward a cluster of jagged metal spires. They're learning, Elena shouted, firing at a drone that had just evaded Adira's shot. We can't keep this up forever. Elise scanned the terrain, her mind racing. We need to use the environment to our advantage. Marcus, can you rig something with the drone parts? Marcus looked down at the sparking remains of a drone he'd disabled. Give me a minute. We don't have a minute, Adira barked, taking out another drone with a well-placed shot. Marcus worked quickly, his hands a blur as he reconfigured the drone's power core. Okay, this should work. It's not pretty, but it'll overload their sensors. He activated the device and hurled it into the center of the swarm. The makeshift EMP exploded in a burst of white light, and the drones faltered, their movements growing sluggish and erratic. Go, 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 Elise shouted, leading the team away from the disabled swarm. The team pressed on, the heat and gravity continuing to rise. Their strength was fading, and every step felt like a monumental effort. Adira stumbled, catching herself on a jagged outcrop. I'm fine, she insisted, though her voice was strained. Elena checked her scanner. The gravity flux is reaching dangerous levels. If it gets any stronger. Elise cut her off. It won't. We're not stopping now. Jack, ever the optimist, tried to lighten the mood. Hey, at least there aren't any lava pits. I was expecting lava pits. As if on cue, the ground beneath them began to rumble. Cracks formed in the metallic surface, and molten metal began to seep through, glowing a fierce orange. You just had to say it, didn't you? Marcus muttered. The team reached the base of a massive tower that loomed above the molten landscape. At its peak was a glowing beacon, the trial's endpoint. Elena's scanner beeped urgently. The heat and gravity are at critical levels. If we don't reach that beacon soon, we're not dying here, Elise said firmly. Marcus, can you rig something to stabilize the tower? Marcus examined the structure, his mind racing. Maybe, but I'll need time. Then we'll buy you time, Adira said, raising her rifle. The drones returned, their numbers bolstered by larger, more heavily armed models. The team fought with everything they had, holding the line as Marcus worked to stabilize the tower's structure. Finally, Marcus shouted, "It's done. Let's move." The team ascended the tower, their bodies screaming in protest as the gravity continued to press down on them. Jack nearly lost his grip but was pulled up by Adira. "Thanks," he panted. "I owe you one." "You owe me 5, she shot back. At the top of the tower, the team activated the beacon. A wave of energy swept over the terrain, neutralizing the gravity flux and halting the molten flow. The oppressive heat faded, and the drones powered down. The voice returned, resonating through the air. "You have endured the forge of eternity. Your resilience and ingenuity are commendable. Proceed to the next trial." As a portal opened before them, Jack turned to the others, his grin tired but intact. "Well, that was fun. What's next? Alien trivia?" Elise rolled her eyes, but there was a faint smile on her face. "Let's hope it's something easier." The team stepped through the portal, knowing the worst was yet to come but ready to face it together.
The team stepped through the glowing portal and emerged into an eerie, silent chamber. The ground beneath their feet was smooth and reflective, like polished obsidian, stretching endlessly in all directions. The air was unnaturally still, carrying a faint metallic tang. Suspended above them, vast floating orbs glowed faintly, casting dim, shifting light that made the room feel both infinite and suffocating. "What is this place?" Marcus asked, his voice unusually quiet, as if afraid to disturb the oppressive silence. "This," the familiar resonant voice declared, reverberating through the chamber, "is the weighing of souls. Here, we test not your strength, nor your intelligence, but the very essence of your being. Your morality. Your values. Your ability to act in the face of impossible choices." Elena's scanner blinked furiously, then died. She shook it in frustration. "Nothing. No readings at all. It's like this place is blank." "It's not blank," Adira said, her hand hovering over her holstered rifle. "It's waiting." The voice returned, colder now. "Before you are trials of morality. Dilemmas that will force you to reveal your true nature. Every choice will carry a cost. There is no right answer, only truth." Jack tilted his head. "No right answer? That's the kind of thing people say right before they judge you anyway." The ground shimmered, and the space around them warped. The team found themselves standing on a narrow platform suspended in a vast void. Below, countless fragments of light and shadow swirled like a storm, each flickering with faint images of lives, faces, and moments. "Choose wisely," the voice warned. "For the weight of your decisions may yet destroy you." The storm below coalesced, forming a holographic image of a small colony ship adrift in space. The ship's hull was battered, its engines flickering weakly. Inside, faint silhouettes of passengers could be seen huddled together in desperation. "You are presented with a simple choice," the voice said. "This vessel carries 100 beings from a species unknown to you. Their engines have failed, and their life support is collapsing. You can divert your own limited resources to save them, but doing so will leave you unable to complete this trial." Adira scowled. "If we don't complete the trial, humanity's position in the consortium is jeopardized. But if we don't help, they die," Marcus said quietly, his gaze fixed on the struggling ship. Elise looked at the team. "We need to weigh the consequences. If we fail here, humanity might not get another chance." Jack broke the tense silence. "You know, we've done pretty well winging it so far. Maybe helping them is the trial." Adira frowned. "Or maybe it's a trick to make us fail." Elena stepped forward. It's not just about passing or failing. It's about what kind of species we are. Humanity didn't survive this long by turning our backs on those in need. Elise nodded. Then we helped them. The team worked quickly, rerouting energy from their suits to the holographic ship. As they did, the silhouettes inside the vessel grew clearer: families, children, elders. The ship stabilized, its engines reigniting. The passengers raised their hands in silent gratitude before the image dissolved into light. Interesting, the voice said, its tone unreadable. Proceed. The void shimmered again, and this time the storm coalesced into a battlefield. Soldiers fought desperately against an overwhelming alien force, their screams echoing through the chamber. At the center of the scene was a human soldier, blooded but defiant, clutching a device that could destroy the enemy at the cost of his own life. This soldier has volunteered to sacrifice himself, the voice said. But you may intervene. You can save him, but by doing so, you risk allowing the enemy to regroup and overrun the battlefield. Adira's jaw tightened as she watched the soldier's face. We don't leave our own behind. But if we save him, the battle might be lost, Marcus said. How many more lives will that cost? Jack stepped forward, studying the soldier. I think we're looking at this wrong. It's not about letting him die or saving him, it's about giving him a choice. Does he want us to save him? Elise turned to the team. Adira, can you tell if he's resolved to do this? Adira's voice was quiet. He's made peace with it. I've seen that look before. The team stepped back, watching as the soldier activated the device. The battlefield dissolved in a blinding flash of light, and when the chamber returned to darkness, the voice spoke again. Your choice reflects your understanding of sacrifice. Proceed. The storm below swirled violently, forming two images side by side. On the left was a thriving city, its people going about their lives unaware of the disaster looming above them. On the right was a vast agricultural hub, its fields stretching endlessly under an artificial sun. The city is home to millions, the voice said. The agricultural hub sustains billions across the galaxy. A catastrophic event will destroy one. You must choose which to save. The team froze. Even Jack was at a loss for words. How are we supposed to choose? Marcus asked, his voice shaking. It's impossible. That's the point, Elena said. There is no right answer. Elise stepped forward, her expression grim. We don't choose. We find another way. The team stared at her. What do you mean? Adira asked. I mean we don't play their game, Elise said. We've survived because we don't accept no-win scenarios. We find solutions no one else sees. Jack grinned. You're talking my language, Commander. Elena's scanner beeped faintly. The catastrophic event, whatever it is, seems to be originating from the same source. If we can disrupt it, maybe we can save both. The team worked furiously, combining their skills to locate and neutralize the source of the disaster. The images of the city and the agricultural hub flickered, stabilizing as the chamber returned to darkness. The voice was silent for a long moment. Then, finally, fascinating. You refuse to be bound by the framework of the test itself. Proceed. The void around them dissolved, leaving the team standing on a platform surrounded by endless stars. Before them appeared a shimmering scale, its two sides perfectly balanced. Your final choice, the voice said. One of you must remain behind. The weight of your soul will anchor this place, allowing the others to leave and complete the trials. The team exchanged stunned looks. What happens to the one who stays? Adira asked. They will cease, the voice said simply. Jack stepped forward immediately. Guess that's my cue. I've always been the expendable comic relief. Don't, Elise said sharply. We're not making decisions like that. But someone has to, Jack said, his grin fading. And let's face it, I've been getting by on dumb luck since day one. The rest of you? You're the real deal. Elena stepped forward. There has to be another way. We've beaten every other trial. We can beat this one. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, panic creeping into his voice. This isn't a puzzle. It's a choice. Elise took a deep breath, steadying herself. We came here as a team. We leave as a team. The voice returned, colder now. If no one chooses, you all remain. For a moment, it seemed hopeless. Then Jack smirked. Hey, voice in the sky. What happens if we all step on the scale together? There was a long pause. That is not how the test is designed. Yeah, well, we're humans, Jack said. We don't do designed. The team stepped onto the scale together. It glowed brightly, trembling as if straining against its own rules. The light intensified until the scale shattered, and the chamber dissolved into nothingness. The team found themselves back in the observation chamber of the consortium. Delegates stared in stunned silence as the humans emerged, battered but triumphant. "You were right," Elise said to the watching crowd. "There is no right answer. But there is always another way." For the first time, the Deathworlders weren't dismissed with scorn. Instead, whispers of respect filled the chamber. Humanity had passed the weighing of souls, not by making impossible choices, but by refusing to accept the terms of the test itself. And somewhere, deep within the consortium's archives, an ancient intelligence watched the humans with growing interest. The portal shimmered, swallowing the team in a flash of blinding light. When the brightness subsided, the humans found themselves standing in a vast chamber, unlike anything they had seen before. The walls were an endless expanse of polished, reflective surfaces, like liquid mirrors stretching infinitely in every direction. The floor beneath their feet was a glassy void, as if they were suspended over a bottomless chasm. The air felt heavy with anticipation, tinged with an electric hum that set their nerves on edge. "This place gives me the creeps," Marcus muttered, glancing uneasily at his distorted reflection in the mirror-like walls. "What's the catch this time?" Adira asked, her hand instinctively resting on the hilt of her plasma blade. Before anyone could answer, the now familiar resonant voice of the trials filled the chamber. "Welcome to the Mirror of Truth. Here, we strip away all illusions. You will face the unvarnished reality of your existence, your failures, your regrets, and the truths you hide, even from yourselves." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Ah, so this is therapy. Great. Should we lie down on the floor and talk about our feelings?" No one laughed. The voice ignored him. "Your reflections will reveal the weight of your past. If you cannot face what you see, the trial will end. Proceed." The chamber pulsed with light, and the mirrors rippled like water. Suddenly, the team found themselves surrounded by vivid, holographic projections. The images flickered and danced across the reflective surfaces, coalescing into scenes from humanity's past. The first image showed a battlefield, littered with bodies and stained with blood. Soldiers clashed with crude weapons, their faces twisted in rage and fear. A second image followed, a desolate city, its skyline choked with smoke as civilians huddled in the ruins, their eyes hollow with despair. The third was of a rainforest, its trees reduced to ash and its once vibrant ecosystem stripped bare by machines. Elena stepped forward, her expression grim. "It's showing our wars, our destruction. All the worst parts of us." The voice returned, cold and accusatory. "Your species has wrought devastation upon its own kind and its own world. You have consumed, destroyed, and betrayed. What makes you worthy of joining the consortium?" For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of the images was suffocating, a stark reminder of the darkest chapters of human history. Marcus looked away, unable to meet the gaze of the flickering projections. Adira's jaw clenched, her fists tightening at her sides. But Jack, ever irreverent, ever audacious, stepped forward. "Yeah, we've screwed up. Big time. But let me ask you this, oh great disembodied voice, how many of those wars were fought by people trying to make things better? How many of those cities were rebuilt stronger than before? How many of those forests are regrowing because we learned from our mistakes?" Elise crossed her arms, standing beside him. "We're not perfect. But we've never claimed to be. What makes us worthy is that we keep trying. We don't give up." The mirrors rippled again, and the voice fell silent. For now the scene shifted, and this time the mirrors showed not humanity as a whole, but the individual failures of each team member. The first to see her reflection was Adira. She stood frozen as the mirror showed a younger version of herself, crouched in a foxhole on a distant battlefield. Her squad mates screamed for help as enemy fire rained down, but she stayed hidden, paralyzed by fear. "No," she whispered, her voice shaking. "That's not how it happened." But the mirror didn't lie. It showed her retreating, abandoning her comrades to their fate. Tears welled in her eyes as the memory resurfaced, raw and unrelenting. "Adira," Elise said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You survived. You came back stronger. You're here now because you didn't let that moment define you." Adira swallowed hard, her fingers trembling. Slowly, she nodded, stepping back from the mirror. Next, the mirror turned to Marcus. It showed him in a lab, surrounded by sparking machinery and roaring flames. A young colleague screamed as a piece of equipment exploded, but Marcus was already running for the exit, leaving the man behind. "I didn't," Marcus stammered, his voice breaking. "I thought he was right behind me. I didn't know he—" "You made a mistake," Elena said gently. "But you've spent every day since then making sure it never happens again." Marcus closed his eyes, forcing himself to take deep breaths. When he opened them, the reflection had faded. The mirror turned to Elena next. It showed her sitting beside a hospital bed, holding the hand of a frail, elderly woman. Her mother. The younger Elena in the image was visibly exhausted, her expression one of guilt and regret. "I wasn't there when she passed," Elena said quietly. "I thought I had more time." Jack, for once, didn't make a joke. "No one ever has enough time. But you gave her everything you could while you had it. That matters." The mirror turned to Elise, but she didn't wait for it to show her reflection. "I know what it'll show," she said bluntly. "Every soldier has regrets. Every leader has failures. I've lost people under my command. I've made choices that cost lives. But I'm still here. I'll keep making choices, because that's what leaders do." Finally, the mirror turned to Jack. He smirked at first, but the reflection wiped the grin from his face. It showed him standing on a stage, a spotlight shining down as the audience laughed and applauded. But as the camera panned closer, his face was hollow, his eyes empty. The reflection showed him walking off stage to an empty room, the laughter fading into silence. "I always said humor was my armor," Jack said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. "Turns out, it's a pretty thin shield." Elise stepped forward, her voice firm but kind. "You're more than a comedian, Jack. You've kept us sane through all of this. Don't underestimate the power of what you do." The mirrors rippled one last time, and the individual reflections faded. In their place appeared a single image, humanity's potential future. It showed Earth thriving as part of the consortium, its people reaching out to other worlds in friendship and cooperation. But the image was fractured, splitting to show another path. Earth isolated, its people consumed by greed and division, left to wither while the galaxy moved on without them. "This is the truth of your species," the voice said. "You are both your greatest strength and your greatest weakness. Your capacity for growth is matched only by your capacity for destruction. The question remains, which path will you take?" Elise stepped forward, her gaze steady. "That's the beauty of humanity. We don't know. But we'll fight like hell to make sure it's the right one." The chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, the mirrors began to dissolve, the reflective surfaces melting away like mist. The voice returned, softer now. "You have faced the mirror of truth and emerged whole. Proceed to the final trial." The team found themselves back in a small, dimly lit chamber. For the first time since entering the trials, there was no immediate threat, no looming challenge. They sat together, silent, each lost in their own thoughts. After a long moment, Jack broke the silence. "So, anyone else feel like they just got hit by a galactic therapy session?" Adira snorted, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You could say that." Elena sighed. "We've faced a lot of things in these trials, but this was different. It wasn't about strength or skill. It was about us." Elise nodded. "And we made it through. Together." Marcus leaned back against the wall, his voice tired but resolute. "One more trial. Then we're done." Jack grinned, his humor returning. "And after that? Drinks are on me." The team laughed, the sound a welcome reprieve from the weight of the trial. They didn't know what the final challenge would bring, but they were ready. They had faced the truth and survived. And now, they would face whatever came next. The shimmering portal opened once again, and the human team stepped into what felt like a vast, boundless arena. The ground beneath their feet was cold and metallic, an endless expanse of smooth, reflective plating stretching to the horizon. Above them, a sky of swirling, chaotic energy loomed, flickering with lightning and pulses of blue and orange light. A faint hum resonated in the air, like the heartbeat of a massive machine. "This doesn't look like a test of unity," Marcus muttered, scanning the environment with unease. "Feels more like we're standing in the middle of a power grid about to blow." "It's never what it looks like," Adira said, her grip tightening on her plasma rifle. "Stay sharp." The resonant voice of the trials returned, louder and more commanding than ever before. "Welcome to the final trial, the Gauntlet of Unity. This test measures the cohesion of your team and the strength of your bonds. You will face challenges that demand absolute trust, perfect coordination, and sacrifice." Jack raised an eyebrow, his grin faint but present. "Oh good, more teamwork. I was hoping for a break, maybe a galactic board game or something." Adira rolled her eyes. "Focus, Jack." The voice continued, unbothered by the interruption. "You will traverse this gauntlet together. If even one of you fails, the trial ends, and humanity's bid for ascension will be denied." Elena's scanner blinked to life, finally picking up readings again. She frowned at the display. I'm detecting multiple energy signatures ahead. They're erratic. Hostile, probably. Probably? Jack asked. That's reassuring. Elise stepped forward, her voice firm and steady. We've made it this far. Whatever's waiting for us, we face it together. As they moved forward, the ground began to shift beneath them. Large panels of the metallic floor retracted, revealing an expanse of electrified pits that sparked and crackled with lethal energy. Between the pits, narrow platforms extended in a winding path, barely wide enough for a single person. We'll need to cross one at a time, Elena said, her voice tense as she calculated distances. The platforms are unstable. They might shift or collapse. Adira tested the nearest platform, and it wobbled under her weight. We don't have time to overthink this. I'll go first. Hold on, Marcus interrupted, examining the panels ahead. I think I can stabilize them. At least temporarily. Working quickly, Marcus rigged a device from his toolkit, linking it to the unstable panels. This should buy us a few seconds for each person. Adira, you're up. Adira moved with precision, her military training guiding her steps. The platform trembled beneath her, but Marcus's device held steady. When she reached the other side, she turned and gave a sharp nod. Next. One by one, the team crossed, each relying on Marcus's device and Adira's instructions shouted from the other side. Jack went last, his usual humor subdued as he balanced carefully on the swaying platforms. When they all reached the other side, the floor rumbled, and the path disappeared behind them. Well, Jack said, letting out a breath, nothing like a deadly floor to bring people closer. The team entered a vast chamber where 5 pillars of light stood in a circle. At the base of each pillar was a console, its glowing interface pulsing faintly. In the center of the room, a spherical device floated, its surface covered in shifting, intricate patterns of light. What now? Marcus asked, approaching one of the pillars cautiously. The voice returned. This is the trial of sacrifice. Each of you must activate a pillar. Doing so will drain a portion of your life force, weakening you for the remainder of the gauntlet. If even one of you refuses, the trial ends. Adira stepped forward immediately, her expression resolute. We've been sacrificing ourselves since we started this thing. No point stopping now. Elena hesitated, her hands hovering over one of the consoles. But what if it weakens us too much? What if we can't finish the gauntlet? Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, his tone surprisingly gentle. Hey, we've been through worse. You're the brains of this operation. If anyone can figure out how to make it work, it's you. One by one, the team placed their hands on the consoles. The pillars of light flared, and each member winced as the device drained their energy. Marcus staggered, catching himself against the pillar, while Elena clutched her chest, her breathing shallow. When the final pillar activated, the spherical device in the center transformed, its light spreading across the room to reveal a new path. The voice spoke again, this time with a faint note of approval. You understand the cost of progress. Proceed. The team emerged into the final chamber, an enormous circular arena surrounded by a swirling void. In the center of the arena stood a towering, crystalline structure, pulsing with blinding light. Smaller crystalline nodes orbited the structure, emitting beams of energy that intersected to form a deadly web. What the hell is that? Adira asked, shielding her eyes from the intense glow. The Unity Core, Elena said, her voice awed. I think it's the source of the gauntlet's power. The voice returned, louder and more imposing than ever. Your final task is to deactivate the Unity Core. Each node represents a piece of your bond. To succeed, you must work in perfect harmony. The nodes began to move, their orbits accelerating as beams of energy crisscrossed the arena. The team exchanged tense looks. Perfect harmony, Marcus said, wiping sweat from his brow. No pressure. Elise stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos. We'll divide the nodes. Elena, focus on identifying weak points. Marcus, disrupt their patterns. Adira, cover us. Jack, keep the core distracted. Jack grinned. Distract the giant death crystal? Sure, no problem. The team sprang into action. Elena analyzed the node's movements, shouting instructions to Marcus as he used his tools to disrupt their orbits. Adira fired precise shots, clearing the way for the others, while Jack ran circles around the core, shouting taunts and dodging energy blasts. As the final node destabilized, the Unity Core unleashed a pulse of energy that knocked the team to the ground. The room trembled, and cracks began to spread across the crystalline structure. We did it. Marcus shouted, scrambling to his feet. Not yet, Elise said, pointing to the core. We need to finish it off. Adira stepped forward, her plasma rifle aimed at the core's center. Then let's end this. The team rallied, combining their remaining strength for a final coordinated assault. Elena calculated the core's weakest point, Marcus set up a makeshift explosive, and Adira fired the shot that shattered the core into a million shards. The chamber fell silent. The swirling void faded, replaced by a tranquil, star-filled sky. The voice returned, softer now, almost reverent. You have passed the gauntlet of unity. Humanity has proven its worth. Welcome to the Galactic Consortium. The team found themselves back in the observation chamber, where the gathered delegates of the consortium stared in stunned silence. For the first time, there was no laughter, no sneers, only respect. Jack broke the silence, his grin returning. So, drinks on us? The chamber erupted into applause, and Elise allowed herself a rare smile. They had done it. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through strength alone, but through resilience, ingenuity, and unity. The applause in the observation chamber of the Galactic Consortium was thunderous, a sound that seemed almost too immense for the vastness of the station. Delegates from hundreds of species, many of whom had jeered and doubted humanity mere days ago, now clapped in awe and respect. The human team stood at the center of the grand platform, battered but triumphant. Elise Carter, the team's commander, allowed herself a rare smile as she scanned the faces of the crowd. The trials had tested them in ways she couldn't have imagined, but they'd persevered. Humanity had earned its place. Jack Travers, the team's comedian and unofficial morale officer, leaned toward Adira Singh, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Do you think this applause is genuine, or are they just relieved they don't have to watch us anymore? Adira smirked. A bit of both, probably. But even as the applause echoed, a dissonant energy hung in the air. Elise felt it first, a subtle shift that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. The vibrant lights of the chamber seemed to dim slightly, as though an unseen shadow crept over the room. The applause faltered, replaced by murmurs of unease. A deep hum resonated through the station, and the massive doors at the far end of the chamber began to open. The light pouring through them was cold, sterile, and unnerving. What now? Marcus Hayes muttered, his voice laced with both exhaustion and trepidation. A figure stepped through the doorway, flanked by two smaller entities. It was massive, easily twice the height of the tallest delegate, with sleek black armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its eyes, or perhaps senses, glowed faintly red, and its movements were unnaturally smooth, as if gravity itself obeyed its will. The murmurs grew louder, tinged with fear. Delegates leaned toward one another, their voices urgent but hushed. That can't be who I think it is, Elena Park whispered, her eyes wide. Who? Jack asked, frowning. Did we miss the after-party memo? Elena's voice was barely audible. The Zarkolan envoy. The Zarkolans were more legend than reality, an ancient species that had withdrawn from the galactic stage eons ago. They were said to dwell in the uncharted voids between galaxies, their technology so advanced that it bordered on godlike. Most believed they had no interest in the consortium, or any other interstellar powers. And yet, here they were. The towering Zarkolan envoy stopped at the edge of the human team's platform. Its presence silenced the room, an oppressive stillness that made the air feel thick. When it spoke, its voice resonated in frequencies beyond human hearing, translated instantly by the consortium's linguistic matrix. Humans, it intoned, its voice calm but unfathomably deep, you have proven yourselves resilient in the face of adversity. Adaptive. Unified. Elise stepped forward, her expression guarded but respectful. Thank you. We're honored by your presence. The envoy's glowing eyes fixed on her, and though its expressionless face revealed nothing, the weight of its gaze was palpable. Your species has passed the ascension trials, but your path is far from over. Elena took a cautious step closer. What do you mean? The envoy gestured with one massive hand, and the air above the platform shimmered. A holographic projection flickered to life, displaying a dark, foreboding structure, a massive, spiraling fortress adrift in the void. Its design was utterly alien, with jagged spires and pulsating veins of energy that radiated a menacing, otherworldly power. This, the envoy said, is the abyssal reliquary. It lies at the edge of your galaxy, sealed for eons. Marcus frowned, studying the projection. What is it? The envoy's gaze shifted toward him. A prison. And a warning. The hologram shifted, zooming in on the structure's core. Inside, faint shadows writhed, their forms indistinct but menacing. The energy surrounding the prison seemed to pulse, as if something within was alive and straining against its confines. For millennia, the envoy continued, the abyssal reliquary has contained the remnants of an ancient threat, an enemy so powerful it nearly consumed the stars themselves. Adira tightened her grip on her weapon. And now it's waking up, isn't it? The envoy inclined its head. The seals are weakening. Your galaxy is unprepared for what lies within. Elise's voice was firm. Why are you telling us this? If the Zarkolans knew about this threat, why didn't you stop it? The envoy paused, and for a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Our time has passed. The task of safeguarding this galaxy now falls to those who inhabit it. Jack folded his arms. Convenient. You're telling me your godlike species couldn't handle this, but somehow it's our problem now? The envoy didn't respond directly. Instead, it turned back to Elise. Humanity's actions have drawn the attention of the Abyss. The trials were a crucible, a test not just for your species, but to see if you were ready to bear this burden. Elena's face paled. You're saying, the trials were bait? The envoy's voice remained steady. A signal. The Abyss stares when it senses potential adversaries. Your victory has awakened it. The Zarkolan envoy stepped closer, towering over the humans. You must decide. Abandon the consortium, return to your world, and prepare for its inevitable arrival. Or take up the mantle of defenders and face the Abyss head-on. The room erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted and argued, their voices rising in a cacophony of fear and outrage. Some pleaded for the humans to take on the burden, while others demanded that the consortium as a whole address the threat. Elise turned to her team, her expression unreadable. Thoughts? Adira spoke first. If we back down now, Earth will still be a target. Better to face it on our terms. Marcus nodded reluctantly. She's right. If we fight together, we might stand a chance. Elena hesitated, then added, and if we don't, the consortium might fall apart. Humanity will be alone again. Jack rubbed the back of his neck, glancing at the hologram. Well, I'm all for running away, but, let's be honest, we've already poked the bear. Might as well see it through. Elise looked at each of them in turn, her chest tightening. They were exhausted, battered, and out of their depth. But they were also united. She turned back to the envoy, her voice steady. We'll face it. Together. The envoy inclined its head. Then you must prepare. The abyssal reliquary will not wait. As the Zarkolan envoy departed, the observation chamber remained in stunned silence. The humans stood at the center of the platform, the weight of their decision settling heavily on their shoulders. Jack broke the silence, his grin faint but present. So, anyone know where we can get a really big gun? The others chuckled, though the tension didn't fully dissipate. Elise turned to her team, her voice resolute. We've faced the impossible before. We'll do it again. Around them, the delegates of the consortium began to rally, inspired by humanity's defiance. The once doubtful elites now looked to the Deathworlders as leaders, their bravery igniting a spark of hope. For the first time, humanity wasn't just fighting for itself. It was fighting for the galaxy. The camera pans out, showing the massive consortium station against the backdrop of a swirling galaxy. In the distance, the ominous silhouette of the abyssal reliquary looms, its pulsating energy growing stronger. The stage is set for a battle that will decide the fate of the stars. But as the team celebrated, a shadow passed across the observation chamber. In the distance, a massive, dark figure loomed, its presence sending a chill through the room. The trials were over. But the real challenge was only beginning.